Okay, good evening. Thank you all for coming. This is pretty exciting for us. We don't usually see very many people in the crowd. Welcome to the February 24th meeting of Kitsap Public Facilities District. I think we'll roll right into, there's only the two of us up here because everybody else is on Zoom. So if you want to roll into public comment, Russ, and see what we've got. Oh, can you not hear? Okay, thank you for telling me that.
Sure. Does anybody would like to make a public comment? If you would, come up to the podium there. You have 3 minutes. All right. If any of our guests online would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. All right, Mr. Anderson, go ahead.
Good evening. How are you?
We're good, sir. Thanks for joining us.
One observation, if I'm reading the information correctly, with Port Orchard having the start of bond debt servicing in 2026, does that mean that the current ILA with Port Orchard that appears to expire at the end of this calendar year will get to be extended sometime soon?
That's correct. That's the plan, is that we will work with the city on that extension.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if I was understanding the process accurately enough. And then one other curiosity point I have, given that the state is wrestling with deficits, more items to spend money on than items to receive money from income, I wondered, is monies for PFDs still considered secure, or could the legislature, if they had mind to make changes and even reduce the amount of funds made available to PFDs from the sales and use tax rebate?
No, sir, Mr. Anderson, those are still fine. It's not something that we are funded with other than through a collection of a portion of our sales tax dollars that are collected in Kitsap County once a month. So there's no law that's going to be stopping that, and we have no other state funding as part of our revenue pool other than the state sales tax.
So, and the current bill that you mentioned in the agenda, HB 1109, is for extending the time frame beyond 2040, is it?
Yes, sir, that's correct. HB 1109, which we will talk to when we get to general business, is to extend the collection of the sales tax use until 2065.
Okay, well, I will wait for that to occur in the next few minutes here. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thanks for dialing in. Anybody else online that would like to make public comment, or again, anybody out in the audience there that would like to make public comment? All right, Madam Chair, then public comments are complete.
All right, let's move into the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? All right, the consent agenda is approved as submitted. We are ready for number 4 for our financial outlook.
That's correct. Let me get to that. And then we have Ryan Newmeister and Scott Bauer online with us for Pacific Northwest Municipal Advisors. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here for a second so I can bring up their presentation.
And Russ, I'm glad to, if I'm able to share my screen, I can click through it however you like to do it. It's fine by me.
Yeah, that would be fine if you want to do that. Let me give you the ability. Okay, you should have the ability now, Ryan.
All right, great. All right, can you see my screen all right?
Yes, thank you.
We can, yeah, we're good to go on our end.
I agree. Well, thanks again for having us. We are a municipal advisor to the district. We do our business is a lot of planning for capital projects and helping issue bonds or financings for various entities throughout the state. Well, our role with the district has been a lot of essentially planning for funds coming in and for projects that you have on your docket here to make sure that there's enough funds coming in to be able to pay for the project as the projects come up. I'm joined by my colleague Scott Bauer on with us today as well. We will kick right into kind of your overcast outview going out to 2041. The district has revenues that are projected to go out to 2041, as noted by the bills that are available to the district, and so we looked for funds to be coming in for that sales tax rebate. As far as expenses for the district, you really have your operating expenses, rent, payroll, conferences, those types of things. And then you have your existing debt service with the county, who issued the bond for you back in, I think it was back in 2001 and then 2011, as well as you have 3 issues outstanding with the county, 2015, 2021, and 2022. We'll walk through those a little bit. And then your future debt service for projected projects, for bonds that will be out there that will be issued in the next couple of years, as well as cash payments that we project out for certain projects as well, whether it be for design and planning or for other projects that already have their funds set in stone here. So we'll walk through these pieces. We'll quickly do a recap of last year. So 2024, you did have what we had projected for funds coming in. Sales tax was down a little bit last year, 2.1% instead of the 2.5% projected increase from the previous year. Although we do have some interest earnings as well. Your expenses were less than what were projected. And overall, it looks like some of the projects didn't quite get as far as they wanted to last year, and so we did see essentially a decrease in the amount of expected payments to be going out. All that does for the district is just to be aware that those payments are still coming up. I would expect that most of the entities that you're working with who have requested funds will just request them in another year before their ILAs run out, even if they didn't affect this past year. So you did have a change in fund balance of about $725,000 last year, bringing you up from a 3.8 to a 4.5. But as said, most of those funds will be expected to be used at some point. There are 4 projects that the district currently has ILAs for or letters of intents for. So the Paulsbo Event and Recreation Center, last year the district signed an agreement ILA with the city of Paulsbo for $8.7 million. I believe that some of the funds were drawn today with the approval of the consent agenda, but essentially all those funds were still available as of the beginning of the year. The expiration of that agreement is in the end of 2027. The Port Orchard Community Event Center has 2 pieces. They have the $12 million ILA and then a $6.5 million letter of intent. About $9.8 million of funds are remaining to be drawn on the original ILA, most of which is construction, some of which is design, but I believe most of which is construction. And that agreement expires at the end of this year. And then the letter of intent would still need to be approved for further approval by the district. But we're going to consider that $6.5 million today. Then you have the Port Gamble Heritage Park project. There's just over $2 million ILA for this. About $768,000 of funds remain to be drawn on that. That ILA expires at the end of June of this year. And so we will still project that the county will request the rest of those funds for that project before the ILA runs out. And then the Port of Bremerton currently has a $1.4 million ILA, and the district is paying about $144,000 a year. That started a couple of years ago and will go on through 2031. So as we look at your budget overall, what we're going to do is our forecasting overall. I'm just going to walk through kind of what this page is and all the different pieces of it. So first, we'll look at your sales and tax use rebate over here. We're showing this growing at 2.5%, and that's what this projection is over on this side. You have your expenses, which are growing at a 1.5%. It's noted here. You have your existing debt with the county, the 2015s, 2021Bs, and the 2022Cs. And I think what's important to see here is that your 2021B bond, this is the last year of the payment for that. The other piece of that, if you remember, in 2022, we put into escrow and extended out the debt for that last year. So the 2026 payment will be paid out of your escrow account, and then the $67,000 about will be paid out every year going out to 2041. And then your 2015 bond, there's about $22,000 that's being paid on that. So that's the difference between the $90,000 being paid next year and the $67,000 being paid the year after that. But generally, you're seeing a big piece of debt falling off of the books for the district after the end of this year. And so you'll see some relief in the budget forecast here. And then the district has essentially cash payments for ILAs that are currently outstanding. So there's some design work for Port Orchard, the Pulsbo, and the Pulsbo projects here that we have noted leading up to the construction phases for those two. So about $600,000 for Port Orchard and $1.5 million for the PERC project.
Hey, Ryan, is it possible for you to increase on your end? Because it's really, really hard to see here on the screen. There you go. Thank you.
So we're showing about, like I said, about $600,000 or $590,000 for the Port Orchard project here for design and planning. And then for the PERC project, it sums up to $1.5 million for their design and planning before the construction phase. The thought would be, well, we'll get into the financing of the rest of that project in a minute. Then you have the Fort Gamble Heritage Park project, about $770,000 here remains in that ILA and would be paid out this year, I would assume, before the end of the ILA in June. And then for the Port of Bremerton project, we have the $140,000 a year being paid out to 2031. And then statistics that we're going to note here is going to be for the net position. This is this column over here. Let me zoom back in. Or the change in fund balance here. So what you have here is just the change in how many more or less funds you have every year. As we noted, a lot of these projects did get delayed over the past couple of years as far as funds going out for. So we do see essentially using about $1.7 million in fund balance this year to make the cash payments for the design phases of these projects, or payments that are already noted for the county or other projects. And then your ending fund balance over here.
Ryan, may I ask a question?
Sure.
So looking at the ending fund balance, I see that we're not showing any more payments for any of the other projects through 26 on. So that number is just a placeholder because it's not showing the rest of the payments that are already committed.
Right. That's just showing where we're at right now. Well, I guess in this demonstration, what I'm just trying to show is where everything is on this page. We're going to then phase in, I guess, all the different pieces for the projected bond payments and financings for the other projects, and then we'll show what that looks like at the end here.
Right. So the only number that's really truly pertinent right now is that $2.8 million at the end of 2025. The rest will get forecasted.
Correct.
Okay.
So for the Paulsbo Event and Recreation Center, like as we said, we have the $1.5 million going out this year, and then $7.1 million of construction to be financed. We're assuming that the bond will be issued this year, and then the debt service will begin in 2026, then going out to 2041. The city of Poulsbo has committed to issuing the bond using the city's LTGO security. And so what we've done is we've run numbers with a comparable AA rated city and then added on 50 basis points. So we get to that point, so we're going to run it at an interest rate of about 4.1%. And so here we have the $1.5 million for the perk for the cash this year, and then $626,000 every year afterwards, going out to 2041. This is a little bit less than what we had projected, I think, previously. With it being, now that we're getting a little bit closer to the financing of these, we have tried to hone in a little bit on interest rates. And so that's where we're at here as far as this interest rate. So we do see that being a little bit less than we had before, including the amount that is in the ILA. And so you're well within that buffer space. And then for Port Orchard Community Event Center, we have the two pieces. You have your $9.2 million remaining in the current ILA and the $6.5 million in the LOI. Things that we're still working on is, who will issue the bond, when will the bond be issued, and the type of security for the bond. So in this scenario, we'll show is if the city of Port Orchard will issue the bond, that the bond will be issued this year as the ILA runs out before the end of the year, and that the debt service will begin next year. We'll continue the city's LTGO security in this example, and assume same thing with Poulsbo, AA rated city, plus 50 basis points. And so we have these two pieces here being phased in. So we have your.
And then another question, Ryan. So that's with the assumption that Port Orchard is able to put the bonding in place. So if the bonding rolls back to the district to put in place, what is an estimate of what the assumed true interest cost could be?
So we do have that also. I'll show that on another slide. We do
Okay.
have that under a kind of a stress case scenario as far as if costs end up going up or if the district ends up having to issue the bond.
Okay, thanks.
So we have the ILA piece on the one side and the LOI piece on the other side for now. And then the Port Gamble Heritage Park and the Port of Bremerton, we have $768,000 remaining on that, cash this year, and same thing, Port of Bremerton, as we mentioned. I think the big thing that you're going to notice here is that previously we had heard from the county that they would have additional phases for their project. And so there's about another $6.3 million that we had always kind of earmarked into here, just leaving it in 2041 as just a placeholder for somewhere to have that. In this case, we are not showing that any further. So it's not being included in the scenario that you'll have here. But as you can see, we just have the cash payments for these two projects that we know about, and essentially the payments that we know for Port of Bremerton. So when we put this all together now, and I'll zoom in on this, because as you noted, we are now getting a little bit closer to estimating these. But as we said, these last two columns is really what we want to look at most is when are you using your fund balance or drawing down on your fund balance throughout the years, and then how much money do you have left over at the end? And so, when we've shown this in the past, I think the two big differences are, one, we're not including the additional $6.3 million for the county Port Gamble Heritage Park project. And we are also have honed in on rates a little bit. So the rates that we've had in here before between a 4.5% are now down to 4.1. Is any questions on this before I move further?
Sorry, I'm having trouble with my microphone. Yeah, just an overall question, and I know I've brought this up in other times. I know we've got a revenue forecast of a 2.5% increase. Like you said, we only ran 2.1% in 2024, and I'm uncomfortable with forecasting these numbers at 2.5 as of right now, with the number of bankruptcies and whatnot that are coming along in the retail fields. Did you do a stress test at all looking at a lower income level?
We have. So we've looked at two different scenarios, the scenarios we've done before, and let me give me a minute. We'll get to those two, and then if you'd like me to run additional scenarios for another meeting, I'm glad
Okay,
to do that for you.
that's good, thank you.
So like I said, we do expect certain money going out this next year, and then looking, what we had for the beginning for what happened in 2024, we have a similar projected cash flow summary here. So as we saw what happened in 2024, as we see in 2025, we are seeing quite a bit more funds being spent on these projects. So instead of having a change in fund balance of going up by $725,000, we're expecting to use about $1.7 million of fund balance this year. So the good news is, we'd like to, you are planning on using that, I guess, as these issues do become fixed, as the city's projects become financed, we will now begin to know what those costs are going to be, which will then help make it easier down the road for you to understand kind of exactly what your costs are going to be. As you noted, we've been using a lot of different estimates for the past few years, but as these projects are now going to be financed, we'll have the cost will be fixed. And last year, we have been projecting a 2.5% increase. Last year's was 2.1%. So let's first talk about, I guess, growth of sales tax over the past few years. Really, we went back to 2002. The points that are highlighted, I guess, are slightly that are not white, are the years that were less than 2.5% increases in the sales tax. So the past 2 years, it was below 2.5%, and then back in 2008, 2009, 10, and 11. The county has really had quite a bit of growth as far as sales tax goes, and hopefully they're able to maintain that. So the first stress test, we lowered it down to 2% from the 2.5% down to 2% straight across the board. And what we do see is the ending fund balance over here of 9.5. So we see a decrease. So just by decreasing it from 2.5% to 2% straight across the board, we do see a decrease of about $2.3 million. Your overall fund balance in general, though, does not decrease below the 2.5 million, decrease between $2.5 million. We're just using $2.5 million as a bogey, as a point of reference, I think, at this point. The district does not have a fund balance policy that requires the district to be above a certain amount. And then the second stress test we ran is, what if we have zero growth in 2025 and only 1% in 2026, and then it comes back up to 2.5 after that. So really, if we see a little bit of a dip where it happens at the same time, and we do see a decrease overall of $1.9 million, although what we do see a change in fund balance continue to hit for a number of years, although it's close, really outside the first year, it's really pretty close as far as break even goes, particularly in 2027 and 2028. And at the same time, your fund balance does not dip below that $2.5 million. And then the third one we ran is, what happens if the district has to issue the bond on behalf of Port Orchard? So if the district issues the bond, we are assuming a higher interest rate because we're looking at a gross revenue pledge of the sales tax coming in. And so the revenue bond versus a LTGO security, and then really knowing kind of where your fund balance is going to be throughout the process. So, we did account for a reserve account. We're not sure if all of these are going to be needed, but we threw them in because at this point we're not quite sure exactly, what the situation is going to be for the district when you issue the bond. And as you can see here, the cost is quite a bit. It's quite a bit more. It's definitely a little bit higher. It shows a difference of about $1.5 million of debt service. And really, you're right at the edge here as far as that that $2.5 million bogey as far as ending fund balance being available to the district. We do look at it, of the money coming in that you have from your revenues, where are you as far as debt service coverage goes, and 1.5. We feel like that will be pretty good to be able to issue the bond if you need to, although we do need to do a little bit more information gathering with the rating agencies and investors. Items to consider if you end up having to issue your own debt is preparing audited financial statements. This is certainly different than maybe some accountability audits that the district has gone through in the past. So investors and the rating agencies will want audited financial statements and maybe a couple of years of those. So we will want to work with the district to get an auditor lined up to be able to start working through those and getting those available for the rating agencies and investors, and then being able to have a financial audit on a regular basis for continuing disclosure for investors that hold the bonds of the district. We have talked to the district about certain policies, and I think Finance Committee may begin to start looking at these a little bit more fully, but fund balance policies, additional bonds tests, when should the district be issuing bonds or be committing to additional projects based on cash flows that come through. We did talk very briefly about getting a bond rating and then rating surveillance. If the district issues their own bond, they will need a bond rating, and surveillance does take place regularly for the district and for any bonds outstanding that are being rated by any of the rating agencies. Continuing disclosure, so informing investors about information that they would want to know about their investment in the district. And there'll be a list of items that the district will have to follow through with once the bonds are outstanding in their name. Tracking project funds to confirm tax exemption on those projects. And maybe just questions for the district is whether or not, who's picking up the extra costs of these, of getting audited financial statements, as well as the additional costs of projected cost of issuing the bond, including interest that the district will be paying. Understanding, I guess, that the debt capacity of all the other entities that may be requesting you to issue the debt. And then, I guess, if there's any delay in issuing the debt, as we have it currently in the model here, the idea would then be to kind of put that money off to the side and not necessarily spend it, but use that money then to put toward construction costs at the time that the cities may need the money for their projects, and this way you can then issue less debt. This way it makes you have enough funds to be able to make those payments, and that you're not just, because the district is restricted by how many years we can go out with for the bonds, up to 2041, and so as you continue to compress that, your debt service payments will go up, for every year that is not there. So the thought with them would be, use that money then to pay down toward the construction of the projects, and then issue less debt, and therefore your payments would still be projected out the way we have them now in this model. So I guess at this point, are there any questions or any other models or scenarios you'd like us to run for another time?
Any question from anyone on the board? Looks like we are good. So I guess, Ryan, Russ, are we all set? We can release Ryan and Scott?
I believe we're set, yeah. Thank you, Ryan, for taking the time to go over this. I will tell the board that Ryan and I have met for quite a few meetings the past couple of months to make sure that we're getting the most, as much information as possible, and all cases and scenarios of what our funding looks like up through 2041 based upon the projects that we currently have obligated ourselves to. So, yeah, they do a very good job. They're so easy to work with, and really appreciate all the efforts that Ryan and Scott put to this.
Yeah, I appreciate all this information. It's important for us to have. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
All right, next we have Mayor Patonsu, so I'm going to ask him to join us, and then if you will give me a second, I'll get his presentation up.
Hello there. Boy, it is raining cats and dogs here. My power's flickered a couple times, so I hope we can get through this presentation and without my screen going dark on us.
I'm bringing it up right now.
Wonderful. Hey, well, it's fresh in my mind. I don't believe the current ILA actually shows that the district is issuing that bond indebtedness. I don't believe we wouldn't have the debt capacity to do that at the city. And I know Erin's shaking her head. She's familiar. We've had this conversation a few times in the past. And I continue to work with Kitsap County. I really want them to be a partner in this project. And we've had some change in county commissioners. They aren't on the hook yet, but I keep working that issue, as well as our lobbyist is working diligently on that bill that would extend your guys' authority too, because it definitely benefits us too.
All right, Mr. Mayor, go ahead and just let me know when you'd like for me to advance the next
Certainly.
slide.
All right, so go ahead and go to the next slide. For those that I think most of us seen this picture, but if you haven't, there's a picture of the front door of the community center, and I'm just going to give you kind of an overview of some of the images and where we're at in some of the processes right now. We've got the first step in these. Matter of fact, go to the next slide, Russ. We'll give you the overview of the entire area. You've got the community center. You got the Kitsap Bank's headquarters. So you see in the top of the screen the lift station. That project is near its critical infrastructure for all of downtown. It's an $18 million sewer lift station, and while it's not very sexy because most of it's underground, it's critical infrastructure for the city. And it should be finished this September. And you see the bank's new headquarters. And then part of this master plan contemplates a parking structure and housing development, mixed-use housing and commercial across the street. And I'll talk a little bit about the street project that is coming here next. So go ahead, Russ. We're working in parallel with Kitsap Bank and their projects on shoreline permits, and we got our shoreline permits for the bank's project and ours. It was just more efficient. The projects are so near each other to permit these at the same time. We've got our applications into the Army Corps of Engineers, and we expect decisions on those permits by this summer. We've got 2 grants, and one is for the current bank building has a seawall, and the bank building is holding the seawall up. Our engineers have determined that we take the bank building down, the seawall will probably collapse in a storm. So we've got a $500,000 grant to build roughly a $2 million seawall and pedestrian path along the front. And we got another $500,000 grant for the plaza that goes in between our building and the bank's building. It would be a public plaza, about a $4 million project there that we got a $500,000 state grant. So go ahead, Russ. Next drawing it's a little tough to read, but it's just an engineered drawing. It's best I had for the overwater structure that when we do the shoreline restoration, and we're doing a half of it will be graded and hanging over the water, but an additional event space that's out on the water in front of the community event center. Go ahead, Russ. All right, so you see the phases here. We've got the community event center and the seawall will be built as phase 1. The bank's project happens, we'll call that phase 0. It has to happen before us because they have to move out of their building. And phase 2, we want to construct at the same time. Our revenue source for the community center and the plaza is park impact fees. and the pace that our housing has been going, we'll have plenty of money to build this. If housing starts to slow down, we wouldn't be ideal, but we could build the plaza space, which is phase 2. This is a separate project and not impact the community center project at all. So go ahead, Russ. Next few slides, I think, are there's the proposed site for the community center for phase 1. Go ahead, Russ. And then you can see the drawing for phase 2, which is a public plaza. Is where we plan to give our farmers market a permanent home. We do a number of festivals, events on our waterfront year round, and it'll just tie in nicely with the event space. Go ahead, Russ. This is our Bay Street reconstruction project. We are right now at a 60% design. The design will be finished at the end of the year. We have, unfortunately, we had a fully funded project about 3 years ago when we got an award for the construction. So it was a $5.5 million project, $2.5 million award, and then a separate award for the design, which is underway. That project, our new engineer's estimates had doubled in cost. So we now have a $10.5 million project, and we've got additional local funds we can put into that. Right now, I've got to ask into the legislature. I was down last week, and it looks very promising for $3.5 million. And everybody says, well, the state's got all these problems, but there's this bucket of money called the Climate Commitment Act. And because our flooding is related to sea level rise, we believe we will compete very well for those dollars. And I had meetings with our representatives, and in particular our senator, who is championing that award to the city. But you can see we're raising this right now. We flood every November during the King Tide events, and we are raising this road 1.5 feet. And so the bank, our plan is to be under construction this time next year. We have two alternatives. One is to build a project that'll take 6 months, and we close this road for 60 days, which is the least expensive way to do it and the quickest way to do it, and minimize impacts. The other alternative is one-way traffic, flaggers, and a 9 to 14 months project. So let's say it takes a year. But it'll cost far more, and we are definitely leaning toward the quicker project, which also the bank is still fully committed to their project, but they're building their building to the new grade, and until we go to construction, they can't start their project. Otherwise they finish their project and we have some sort of a funding delay or project delay. Now they've got a building that you can't get in the front door because it's built 1.5 feet higher than the current grade. You can go on to the next slide, Russ. And you can kind of see the amenities in this. Washington Department, this is a state highway where we've got the state's permission to lower the speed limit. We're going to make it more pedestrian friendly here in the treatments. We wanted a few more trees along here, but the road widths and being able to get fire trucks through here limited how much greenery we were going to be able to put in there. So we've done some cool things with other amenities like stamped concrete and things. So go ahead, Russ. And this just kind of gives you zoom in on that crosswalk, that mid-block crosswalk we're putting in there in front of the community center. Go ahead, Russ. And here's the bank's proposed project that they're waiting patiently for us to get going on this road before they can start their construction. So next slide, Russ. And so here we're at. We believe that we're going to go out to bid at the end of this year on the road. We're going to start construction on the road in the spring of 26. The bank would begin construction, the bank project will also start in the spring of 26. And we're hoping to be under construction on the community center first quarter of 2027. And we just need to be conscious of the bank's, we're not completely in control of that timeline, depending on how quickly the bank's project goes and they get moved into their new building. And as you can see in that last box, our goal is to put the Plaza project out to construction at the same time as the community center project. So go ahead with the next slide, Russ.
I believe that's it, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. So I talked a little bit about the road project and the bank waiting for us. I had met with Kitsap Regional Library today. We kind of have a quarterly meeting, and happened to be today. And they have a capital campaign going for their portion that they've committed to raising, which is, I believe, $5 million. And that they're really kind of slow rolling that capital campaign right now until we get under construction with the road and the bank project. It's tougher to convince people that the project's for real. So they're going to get, once things get actively under construction, they feel that they can gear their fundraising activities up and have much greater success. We have in our budget, we have in the project, community center project, we have one more cost estimate. It'd be foolish for us to think that this hasn't continued to rise like everything else, and with the talks of tariffs and import taxes and things in the media, like I said, we've got one more cost estimate, and we plan to do that early next year. And we don't want to spend those dollars and have that estimate and have it too soon before we're ready to go to construction. So I should have sometime next year, I should have an updated cost estimate from where we're at. And I talked a little bit about our lobbyist is also working in support of that bill to extend your guys' authority beyond 2041. So what questions did you have for me?
Any questions from the board?
All right. Thank you for your time this evening. And obviously, as you heard early in the evening, our ILA is maturing at the end of the year. So Russ and I have already been in conversations about that. And I hopefully will have that before you in the next few months.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so let's move on to the project update for the Port of Bremerton Circuit of the Northwest.
Correct. And I'm going to ask Commissioner Stracklejohn to come up, and then I believe he's got a few others he'd like to introduce. Just pressure down arrow.
Perfect.
There you go.
Okay, great. I got 1.5.
Yeah, let's see if we can change that up a bit for you.
Let's see, how can we do that?
I don't know why it's not doing that. Technical difficulties. Give us a couple of seconds here.
We're just going to bring this PowerPoint up here so we can see it. IT guy.
Yeah.
We'll get the IT expert on it here. But we'll get this slide up in just a minute. So good evening, board members, and thanks for having us this evening. Thanks for having us on the agenda. For those in the public that is watching this evening, I want to introduce myself. My name is Axel Stricklejohn. I'm a 15-year, third-term port commissioner over the Port of Bremerton. I'm also the current chair of the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council. I'm on the executive committee of the Puget Sound Regional Coordinating Council based out of Seattle, which is 4 counties. I'm also on the executive committee of the Central Puget Sound Economic Development District Board, which is also the 4 largest counties in the state. And I happen to kind of say I think it's the 4 largest counties in the entire nation, which I think if you put it together and you realize that we have Boeing, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Blue Origin, and on, you'll find that probably those are the largest Fortune 500 companies, all situated within those four counties. So very pleased to sit on those boards, and have been very active in economic development, and it's sort of more or less my forte. We're here this evening to give you an overview and a progress report. Lots of new exciting things going on at the Port of Bremerton and with our CNW project, and we'll get our PowerPoint up here momentarily. That looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Where's the arrow button?
Oh, yeah, I need to bring in the.
Russ is still getting it tweaked here. I'm going to introduce a couple partners in our project as well this evening to you. Mortensen Construction, we'll introduce them and have them share a little bit about what they do and who they are. James Towns is here all the way from California, has just arrived today, flying up here for this meeting as well. And so he'll give a little financial background as to where we're at and what the horizon looks like. And Bruce Moe is here. I'm sorry, Bruce Moe. My friend's Bruce Moe. Chuck Moe is here as well, and he'll give a little overview of how he sees this project and the benefits this has to our region here.
Sounds like the atmospheric river is flowing over the top of us.
We've got that screen sharing, board members. All you guys sitting at home, can you see this slide? I got a thumbs up from Sean, Pat, Mr. Havers. Thank you. I know it's going to Seebeck, so that's good news. And then just hit the arrow button.
Okay, and then the advanced
arrow
one is
button.
just going to be.
Okay.
Should be.
Just in case I need this. Okay.
Just scroll it up with your thumb.
Perfect. Way to go,
Okay,
Russ.
Do it that way.
Okay, thanks very much, Russ. Okay, so here's kind of an overview of the project master plan. We're really here only talking about the public portion of this, which if you look to the left side of this here, you've got the main stage, the special event area on the left of the slide. That's the portion that is the public portion that we're excited about and excited about moving forward on. The bar at the bottom is, of course, all of our partners that we're working with on the project. This is my favorite slide. This is the one I always like to open with because that's more our airport today than it used to be. We used to have a lot of fixed wing, but today we have a lot more jet traffic going in and out of there than you've probably realized. And in fact, the port's in the middle of doing a master plan right now on potential aviation growth at the airport. So Port of Bremerton, over 100 years old, largest port in the county. We have the largest industrial center west of Seattle, 3,000 acres of industrial zone properties. Currently, we have close to 3,000 jobs. Here it says 2,400. We're just right at about 3,000 right now. 75 business tenants, including C&W, and over 82 hangars and almost 800 slips for your boat. So several years ago, we made a commitment to C&W and to lease them 232 acres of the property way back then, and we are continuing to support C&W. In 24, we extended that lease and met a funding requirement. We committed to $11 million for infrastructure for the project. That will be publicly owned. Of course, the infrastructure is on the Port of Bremerton property, so once it's there, it's publicly owned property and publicly owned infrastructure. We also have a letter of support to C&W that fully supports the efforts in obtaining all the permits, and they are shovel-ready. I think is a point I'd like to really make to everybody and strike home is this project is shovel-ready today. This is one of my favorite slides. This one, look closely. This is what it looks like when it's not raining. Okay? So for those of you sitting at home, we've got a few members in the audience here. I don't know if the BCAT fellow can maybe show our visitors we have. This is the facility. It has been logged. It is ready to roll for the next project or for the next prospect of the project. And it's a cool site. So again, why are we here to give you the update today? We've continued to commit successful capitalization and construction of the entertainment facility, which is the public portion that we're talking about, which is across the road, as you know, in the industrial center across from the airport. We are partnering with Mortensen Construction for the Circuit of the Northwest project, and also have come with a project labor agreement between Mortensen and Olympic Peninsula Construction Trades Unions. Right now, I would like to bring up Michael Harder is here from Seattle. Michael Harder is the Vice President and General Manager of Mortensen Construction. If you don't know who Mortensen is, come on up, Mike. If you don't know who Mortensen is, they're the guys that built Pledge Arena, Climate Pledge Arena. They're also the guys that built the stadium that the Super Bowl was played in Las Vegas 2 years ago. They are, if not one of the largest or the largest construction firm for stadiums, coliseums, and outdoor venues, such as we're talking about up here. So, Michael, take it away.
Thank you, Axel. My name is Michael Harder. I'm Vice President and General Manager for Mortensen, and thank you for having me this evening. I've been with Mortensen for about 30 years, and I'm responsible for all of the construction in Washington State that we do. Mortensen is a family-owned business. It's been started in 1954. It's on the third generation, and we do a lot of different types of work. In addition to sports and entertainment, we're the largest or second largest builder of renewable energy projects, solar and wind. We do a lot of education and university buildings, like at the University of Washington, Bill and Melinda Gates Computer Science and Engineering buildings, lots of different buildings there. We also do a large amount of healthcare projects in the different communities around here. Specific to sports and entertainment, nationally we do a lot of projects. We're the second largest builder of sports projects. Most years it goes in and out, but we did Allegiant Field for Raiders that you mentioned. We also did the Chase Center down at Golden State Warriors down in San Francisco. Locally, we did the Climate Pledge Arena. And those are all big projects that you hear about and you might know the names of, but we do a huge amount of local community type entertainment projects, such as Cheney Stadium. We did that a number of years ago. We built the entire, most of the Tulalip Resort, the hotel and the casino up there. We're working on the Gorge Amphitheater project with Live Nations, and we did the first phase of the White River Amphitheater. So we've done a lot of different projects like that. The reason I wanted to step up here and introduce myself today and talk to you is I wanted to tell you my personal commitment and excitement about this project. One of the things that at Mortensen we do is we have this mantra of building for the greater good. We want to improve the communities that we work in. And this project, it creates entertainment for the community. It creates jobs and it creates tax base. And so it's a project that we're really excited about. I'll also tell you that I negotiated the PLA with Chuck and this group of people here, and really ensures that the workers building it will receive a fair wage. And I've negotiated and worked under a number of PLAs over the last decade, and this was the absolute easiest PLA to negotiate, very equitable to both sides, and we're really excited about being able to partner with the unions on this project. And the third thing is that we have a lot of supervisory and craft workers that work for Mortensen that live on the peninsula, and they call me almost every day. And so I just want to get started and put them to work where they don't have to drive. We've got a large number of people really excited about this project. So with that, I just want to thank you for letting me step up here and tell you a little bit about Mortensen and myself, and tell you we're really excited to work with you. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it. Yeah, thank you, Michael. You know, I can't tell you how excited we are at the port to have absolute top professional people involved in our project. I don't think there's a project on the peninsula right now that has got the professional talent queued up, ready to go for this, if you really look at the resumes and the talent we have there. We have Chuck Moe here this evening. Chuck, welcome. Welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Appreciate you all for your time tonight. Appreciate you paying attention to what I got to say here. I wear a lot of hats, so I'll go through my presentation. You'll see what I've got on the screen here. I am President of Labor's Local 252, Assistant Business Manager, but I'm more importantly right now, I'm here as the President of the Olympic Peninsula Building Construction Trades Union Councils. That particular council is about 16 affiliates. Many of those affiliates are in this room right now, from International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, cement masons, finishers, laborers. We've got plumbers and pipe fitters, sheet metal workers, and many of these individuals live right here in Kitsap County and love to work in Kitsap County. As for myself, I'm also on the executive board for the Washington State Building Trades. I'm also vice president for the Washington State Labor Council Region 6. I'm on the Olympic Workforce Development Committee. All kinds of fun stuff. And the reason I throw out all those titles is I live for the Olympic Peninsula. I live for growth within reason. I live for the Navy in this community. My dad was a retired Navy person, and I take huge pride in being part of this community. See if I can mess this up here. You already heard Michael mention that we do have a project labor agreement fully negotiated, signed by the business managers of every one of these crafts, all 16 affiliates. It is signed, ready to go. We're ready to hit the ground running. We've got a letter of support sitting here. I don't see it on the shared screen here, but looks like it's coming back up. From the Washington State Building Trades, Heather Kurtenbaugh, our executive director of the Washington State Building Trades, representing 30 to 40,000 members in Washington State at any given time. Like I said, many of those living right here in Kitsap County, ready to support and back this project. I'm currently working with the Congresswoman Randall, Congresswoman Strickland, who are looking at this as a regional project for letters of support. We're working on some federal opportunities there. Those will take a minute. Some great movement when it comes to that. I'm used to having a clicker and not moving the screen. Sorry about that. I'll say one more thing about that project labor agreement. It was negotiated between Mortensen and the Building Trades. However, it has also been approved by the National Building Trades, by NAB2. It's gone through their approval processes and on file in their offices. Looking at some of the things that work with us in Kitsap County, and I love this. Let's put Kitsap to work. We're looking at over the project, and you'll see in the bottom here of the feasibility study over about 30 years, but we're looking at 979 new jobs, theoretically, $3.5 billion in new spending, $1.5 billion in new earnings, $56.5 million in new sales taxes. You know, a great revenue builder for Kitsap County. You look at things here on this next slide under new spending, construction spending. Look at the amount of materials that we're going to buy here in Kitsap County. Contractors have stuff delivered in, but they're at Mutual Materials, they're at HD Fowler, they're at the local stores, they're running down to Home Depot. There's a lot of money spent in Kitsap County when a project like this goes on. The concrete that's manufactured close by and moved on to site. There's event spending when the events are ready. There's new earnings for employees and construction workers. We all know when it comes to construction, how do you boost the economy? Heavy highway, heavy construction. I'm not real good at spending money, right? When I'm making good money, when I get a good project, I'm spending good money. I'm eating out the local community. I'm stopped buying my wife something on the way home. My money usually stays, a lot of it, in that county where I earned it, because that's where I'm at all the time. We're going to end up with new full-time jobs, increasing employment in this county long-term on a facility like this. New businesses are potentially going to come in the area. You build a facility like this, even with just the public part of it, you're going to have individuals coming in making carbon materials, race materials. There's stuff going to be built for the event locally. We do have potential for some additional growth within reason. Talk about new sales taxes, property taxes increasing because of the establishment like this, leasehold excise taxes, just a ton of economic potential for Kitsap County. And I'll say it again, let's put Kitsap County to work. Let's continue to support a project like this. With that, I'm going to pass it off to Jamestown, or have Axel do so.
Okay. Chuck, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Chuck. I appreciate the presentation. You did it well. I think, the numbers speak for themselves. If you look at it and you run the numbers, you run the financials on it, it totally makes sense. At the end of the day, it's probably the right thing to do. So, Jamestown, again, welcome. Welcome to the Facilities District Board.
Thanks,
Jamestown has traveled from California today, as I said, so you might be a little bit rummy, but anyway, 37 years experience in capital and debt marketing, and you're off. There you go.
All right. Thanks, Axel. I just wanted to come by again here to talk a little bit about how the financing is coming together and the part of the transaction that Hilltop Securities is involved in. If you don't know Hilltop Securities, we are owned by a company called Hilltop Holdings. They also have a mortgage company called Prime Lending. You might be familiar with Prime Lending. They have offices all over the country, including one in Silverdale. They also own a company called Plains Capital Bank. So Hilltop Securities is part of the financing for this transaction. We are responsible for bringing the senior debt to the capital stack. So when you talk about senior debt and you talk about the capital stack, we're talking about a $250 million project in round numbers. Roughly $150 million, or 60% of that, is senior debt. The rest of the sources of funds come from other places, like public partners, the KPFD, the port, or private partners. We pull together all of the pieces to that financing and bring them together at one point in time, and at that point in time, everything closes or nothing closes. So in other words, if you make a financial commitment, if people make financial commitments, entities, if the bonds aren't sold, if we don't close on the bond issue, all of the other sources of funds don't come to the table as well. It's all one closing at one point in time. I wanted to say one more thing about just the summary update. You met Michael Harder. Chuck talked about the project labor agreement. ASM Global and Legends are two companies that combined last year. ASM Global will be the event manager. They will operate the facility. They will book the acts. They will do everything from making sure that everything is the lawn is mowed, the security is there, all the way to booking the acts for the public events center. So they are a part of this team as well. They were not able to be here tonight. That is sort of the group of people that, we talk about the professionals involved in this. When Hilltop Securities puts a bond transaction together, we ask for support from all of the parties that will benefit from the transaction, including the private entities. Mortenson is putting some of their money to work in this transaction. ASM Global is a purchaser of preferred equity in this transaction. So we ask everybody that's involved for financial participation. We call it skin in the game in the finance markets. We ask for skin in the game from everybody, and CNW has certainly appreciated the relationship with the port and then with KPFD through the port. I wanted to highlight one economic impact number. Chuck went over some of the numbers, but this is over 30 years, over $5 billion in new spending in this region. These are not my numbers. These are numbers that came out of the financial feasibility study that was put together in 2023. That study will be updated in conjunction with the financing as we get to a closing on that transaction. So what we've got here I think you saw the master plan. I've highlighted the two areas of the master plan that are the regional center or the public events centers. As Axel said, the main stage special event area, that area along with Hospitality Village and the small amphitheater area on that master plan from the first page are the areas we're talking about asking the KPFD for additional financial participation. We're asking for $10.25 million, which is half of the estimated cost of those regional center facilities. Just as a way of background and so we can remember Phase 1, Phase 2, and Phase 3 funding from the KPFD. Highlight on this page $60,000 for the original feasibility study, a little over $500,000 for preliminary design of the regional center areas, and then 1.4 for the final regional center design. I believe that's the amount that is being paid divided by 10 years that is still being paid under the ILA that currently exists. We aren't asking for any future bond issues by the KPFD. We're asking for 50% of the cost. And I think one of the important things we're looking at, we're watching that legislation, the 2065 extension possibility. What Circuit of the Northwest can do is agree or make an agreement to reimburse the port and then therefore the KPFD for funds if that extension doesn't go through, or if to the extent that there are not enough funds at the KPFD level in the future. I think that involves some creativity and some creative thinking and structuring. I don't have all the answers or all the ideas at this minute in time, but I think we can all be creative in devising something that is legally correct and can be done financially. I wanted to show the flow of funds. A lot of people say, well, what happens with the money? What happens to this project? When we put together a senior bond structure that looks like senior debt, subordinate debt, preferred equity, and common equity, we enter into an agreement with a bank, usually somebody like a U.S. bank or Bank of New York. They are the trustee for the funds, so all the money's lockboxed. Every dollar that comes into CNW goes into the trust account at U.S. Bank or whoever is the trustee, and that money flows down through a prescribed formula. The money doesn't go to CNW. It goes to the project, and the project trustee distributes that money as it's laid out in the trust indenture. We're primarily wanting to protect the bondholders, those who buy the senior debt that Hilltop would sell at the right moment in time. We're protecting those senior bondholders with this mechanism, but it also protects all of the public money and protects the rest of the funds, because nothing goes to CNW until there's a surplus in the surplus fund, except for operating expenses that are coming out on a monthly basis. So the money is lockboxed and it is tied up in these funds and accounts at a trustee. The last slide that I wanted to go over is project timing. We're anxious to get into the market with a bond issue. We have some capital to raise yet. CNW has capital to raise yet. But this timetable here, if we can get in the ground and be working this summer, putting people to work here, we can see a soft opening by September of 2026 with a grand opening in the spring of 2027, based on what we know now about the schedule and how fast we can Mortensen can build this project. Axel, I'm going to turn it back to you for the wrap up.
Yeah, don't leave. Don't leave. Hang on here. Just take. Here's my crib notes. Yeah, I found my crib notes. Okay. Hang on. Don't leave. Don't leave, James. Don't leave. I got my crib notes here. Let me find out where. Well, and for a wrap up here, I brought thumb drives for all you guys, but you're not here, so James, maybe you could give the board that is here some thumb drives and the rest to Russ, and he can get them to his board.
Great.
Would you?
Yeah,
Okay, thank
do
you.
that.
I'm not going to go through all the rest of these slides, but there are some other slides in here which would be of interest to the board, and they're on these thumb drives, and so I'd encourage you when Russ gets them to you to please take a look at them. Like I said, in closing, we would really like to see a commitment of the $10,250,000 from the board. That's 50% funding for the public portion of this project. We have a construction window coming up this spring. We've got the contractors ready. They've signed the agreement to go to work. Everybody's on standby. And again, we've got a construction window coming up. The timing is there. You know what it's like. It's raining at your house right now. And when the weather breaks here in another 60 days, we need to be on go. That horizon is right there. So on behalf of the port, I'd like to ask the board for the commitment for funding the $10 million for this project, which is 50% of the public side of this project. I think if you go back and look at some of the slides and you do a little recap, you'll see that, as Jamestown just pointed out, money goes into trust. It's secure. It's not going anywhere. If the sales tax rebate doesn't get extended, CNW will guarantee the payments to the port and willing to pay back the facilities district. So basically the risk factor is close to zero on it, and the benefit is tremendous. As Chuck Moe pointed out, hundreds of jobs, if not over the 1,000 job limit, a great public facility. A lot of us, if you're out there and you want to travel with your family, you got to go to the gorge or you got to go somewhere else. Why not have something here? I see a lot of nods here in the audience right now. Shouldn't we be able to provide a facility for our community? And again, my side, I'm the economic development guy. I kind of pride myself on that. It's a great project, and when I shared it with our past Congressman Derek Kilmer several years ago, he just looked me in the eye and he goes, it's a no-brainer project. I mean, he saw the value of this project and what it could bring to the county. So anyhow, again, in summary, thank you for your time. Thank you for your attention. I hope the thumb drives will be of use because there's some other great slides I think you'll love to see. And again, I'd like to ask for commitment. And are there any questions? There should be. Any questions?
Okay, I'll address the elephant in the room. Are you asking for a commitment from us this evening for $10 million plus?
Well, we'd like to have a commitment between now and the 1st of April.
So going back, and I came on this board right around the time that we funded the first feasibility study. So what was that? I'm sorry, not normally known as being quiet.
The first funding, yeah.
But I thought that we had been pretty clear as we've worked through our forecast on budgeting and what you've just seen, that we don't have that money available to commit to another project. And I know that we talked about that last time that the question came up.
So I think that great observation. James, you want to talk on that? And I'm not the financial pro here, James Towns is, but let me just say this, from your earlier presentation this evening, the projects that you have committed are 3 and 5 years out from today to even probably turn in a shovel, and this thing's ready to roll. But James, can you talk on the numbers at all? Because I don't have those.
I mean, I guess just having the money, I think we could look at some creative scenarios to, especially if there's an extension from 2041 to 65, that opens up a whole new doorway of revenues or streams of revenue potential. But there are other creative ways we could, we could discuss with your financial advisor and bond counsel, if you make them available to us.
Yeah, and I know we've discussed some other creative ways at time in the past. As fiduciaries of these funds, we can't go to zero. I mean, there's no dad going to write a check and say, oh, it's okay if you're a couple $1 million over this year. And we feel that very strongly. We're forecasting what we think the income will be. Will it increase? Will our expenses stay flat? Blah, blah, blah. The other part is when we went out to bid on these projects that we're currently doing, and by the way, let me preface this by saying, those of you who've been around for a while know that I've been one of the biggest boosters of this project. I've loved this project since the beginning. This project was number 4 as it matrixed out on the Public Facilities District. So the early $2 million that we have committed to it was because we wanted to see the project done. And in fact, the last $1.4 million that we gave in 21 or 22, the comment came up right then because we said, we've got 3 other projects ahead of you, and we have promised our money to these. This is the end of the money, this 1.4. And we were told, we got it, that's all that's going to come from PFD. And the big question was, will this project still go forward, without any additional PFD funds? And we were told yes. And your project's gotten better since then. I mean, it's very impressive for economic development, for a lot of things. And I'm going to let my board members chime in with this too. I look at our forecasted money, and even if these projects that are existing right now that we have ILAs are, even if they're pushed off, we still have to give them their money. It gets delayed another year. And I just don't see that we have $10 million to be able to commit. And you guys need to get going now. I mean, we've been told it was ready at other times in the past because you were really making big headway on it. So I'd like to hear from any other board members. Oh, there's Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple comments. Obviously, I'm new to this board. I think what Commissioner Stracklejohn and their bond counsel just said, I think makes a lot of sense. I think we should connect them with our finance team to take a look at this. We do have right now forecasting, we just went through this financial scenario, there are surplus funds available. To what extent that the board is comfortable, looking into the future, I think we need to have that conversation. Let's say that the sales tax for the PFDs don't get extended beyond 2041. I still think we have an obligation of the funds that we are projected to collect is to deploy those in our community. Of course, we probably don't draw those all the way to zero, but at some point, right, what do we do with these funds? If our legislator does extend it to 2065, then I think this conversation completely changes. But I think it would be short-sighted of us not to continue to do due diligence to see how we might be able to partner with a project like this. When I compare this project to the other projects on our roster, this really is the only one that is generating income back to the community. It's generating sales tax. It's replenishing some of these very dollars that exist, that provide Public Facilities District to exist in the first place. And so I would encourage our finance team to connect with their finance team and to take a closer look at this.
If I can interject, Mr. Cucciardi, thanks for those comments. I would, and obviously this is not my board, this is your board to do with how you want to operate it, but Madam Chair, I would encourage perhaps a board workshop maybe in the next 10 days or 2 weeks. And as Mr. Cucciardi pointed out, let's get the finance guys all in the room. Let's get towns in the room, let's get everybody in the room, and let's have a round table workshop. And see how
and another thing that I think is important is I think there's been oftentimes a lot of confusion, with the whole idea of Circuit Northwest and all these different partners. Let's remind ourselves that it's the Port of Bremerton that is approaching us for funding support for a public facility that they will own and operate, right? There's a line in the sand there. And so I think that's what we need to focus on. We need to focus on the fact that we have an agency in our county that is by far the largest from an economic development standpoint, that is approaching us and asking for support on a publicly owned facility. And I think we owe it to them to do additional due diligence to see how we might be able to support. Maybe it's not the full $10 million, but I think we should do a deeper dive.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, Sean. I think my concern is we're in the middle of setting up a process right now, because the question comes up of, so the port asks us for 10 million. Let's say we could afford to do this. Do they automatically get it, or do we need to open this to bid for other public entities that may have an equal claim? You know, that's a question we as the district need to ask ourselves. Just because they were fourth doesn't mean they automatically get their next ask. I think we need to figure out, you know, there's other entities that have approached us and we've turned them down because we've said we're not in the bid phase at this point. So I'm not saying it's not a worthwhile thing, as people know, you know, when I first came on here, I do support this. I like the idea of it. So I kind of, you know, like was said earlier, I like the concept. I think this is a good economic boon. I'm just concerned that if we suddenly go, even if we can afford it, here's a check for $10 million, someone else comes out and says, hey, I didn't ask a while ago. I mean, I'm just thinking about the Bainbridge people. We turned them down because we said we're not at the bid phase at this point. So, and that was for a lot less than we're being asked for now. I think it was also a very worthwhile project. So we need to come up with standards now that we've got our 3 projects. If we can afford it, then we need to come up procedures for releasing funds and to determine who's entitled to get them.
Have we not set a precedent already with change orders, though, with some of these other projects?
What was the question?
Well, but I think those are subject to ILAs and so forth for already approved ones versus giving just a brand new project you know, a huge chunk of money.
So for me, I have to agree with Director Leadham. I don't think we have the money, as worthy as the project may be. It's just not there. And I know that they say the circuit will guarantee this if it doesn't go through, but what happens if the circuit doesn't make it? Then are we on the hook for $10 million?
No.
That worries me. We don't have that big of a cushion. You know,
in my opinion, I think if there was any sort of a guarantee in place, the guarantee is not between CNW and the PFD. It's between the port and the PFD.
well, but they said the CNW, the port's going to guarantee it. That might change things.
I think they would have to. If we're going to be writing a check to the port, they're our partner. I think that, again, that's the type of conversations that would have to exist. We are partnering with a public agency, not a private agency. So I think any guarantee that the PFD may need, I think would have to go through the port.
I agree. I just haven't heard the port willing to guarantee it.
Yeah.
I'm very new to come back and work with this board. I do have to say, I really happen to agree with Commissioner Havers at this point, that we need to finish the process of coming up with how do we prioritize and organize what we have and look at a philosophy for spending that. And this just, I mean, it may be a wonderful project, and I'm sitting here feeling pretty excited about the idea, and I can see the economic development potential in it. But I don't think, having heard the conversation as they considered this, some money at a much, much lower amount for another community in Kitsap County, and said, we just don't have the extra money at this point. So I think we should go through, as an organization, we need to go through and reconsider look all through our future planning and how we're going to handle it. And that doesn't, at this point, in my mind, doesn't make a comment about your project per se, but rather about where we are as an organization right now.
Well, I'm not really sure where that leaves us right now.
Is that it for questions? So the acoustics are really bad in this room for you folks zooming in here. Some of the questions are, so just high level, I want to try to knock a couple out. Yes, we have a current ILA in place, Mr. Havers. 2, no, the money's not needed all in one big lump. That's not needed either. Those are 2 questions I think I heard. And was there another one that we didn't answer?
I think one of the questions that came up was if these funds were used and there was a default on the facility itself, is that then the Port of Bremerton's bonds to pay?
I believe so. Mm-hmm. But as you can see, we made an $11 million commitment to infrastructure already for this facility. And it's public money going into a public project for public use, you know. And if you look at the finances on it, the numbers on it, I mean, they're very strong.
Yeah.
You know.
Has the county been approached for funds?
No.
Not at all, over all these years?
Mm-mm.
Is that a possibility?
No.
Okay.
But anyway, so let me just say thank you for your time, everyone. Thanks for your attention to this. We have the thumb drives we handed out. I would just request that perhaps the board could have a workshop in the next 10 days or so. Let's get together. Let's sit at a table. I don't have to be there. Your board, you run it any way you need to think you want to run it. But let's get the numbers guys in the room. Let's sit down and get a pencil and a whiteboard and let's put it down there and let's all get around the table and go to work. You know, let's put Kitsap to work. This is going to bring a lot of jobs and it's going to stimulate the economy. And, you know, I've done a lot of economic development projects in my life and I've run hundreds of millions of dollars of budgets. I wouldn't put my name on it or be standing here if I didn't think this thing was valuable and had merit. So let me just close with that. So thanks for your time. I want to thank everybody that came in from California and points to Seattle tonight. Again, if there's any last minute questions, please ask. We are here. Last minute. Any questions from the board?
It looks not.
Nothing. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
A last comment from me. What would be the harm of having our finance team and Russ sit down with their finance team and have a little workshop? Really understand. I mean, one of the things that frustrates me is if we as a board say we don't have any surplus funds, it's not true, right? It's not true. There are surplus funds. We just looked at a cash flow analysis through 2041, and depending on, you know, the conservative approaches, it's going to be anywhere between $8 and $10 million. And so, again, we may not be able to afford the 10 million requests, but I think we should sit down and at least have the conversation to see how we as a public agency could support another fellow public agency in our county. I don't see why we wouldn't at least go through that exercise.
Well, I agree. Maybe we may have the funds. I don't know that I quite agree with Aaron and Pat. I have the bigger issue of we don't have a procedure about why the port would automatically get it versus opening it up to another group. And so, you know, right now that is a policy we are working on. I mean, that's something that I'm working on with Director Shiplett and I think, you know, Pat and a number of other people. We're on the committee that's coming up with those policies. We've done phase 1, which is basic handbook stuff, and now we're moving into phase 2 to start to establish when we get an ask from someone. Are we going to do small things over a course of the year? Are we going to save up and put it out to bid in 2 years once we've generated enough money? But then we've got to put it out county-wide to a bunch of different groups as a public thing versus, hey, if you're the loudest and you're the first, you get in first. So, you know, that's, I think, what we have to decide what our policies are before we start entertaining, you know, specific bid requests, let alone the money amount. It's more of the policy and the procedure.
Understand, and I completely appreciate that from a policy perspective. But I think those conversations could still continue while we're trying to perfect what that policy may look like moving forward.
So Sean,
It doesn't commit us to anything.
Sean, would you like to make a proposal? Is that what I'm always looking for the right word? A motion, thank you. A motion to have our finance people meet with the Port of Bremerton project?
I would, yes, I would move to ask that our finance team meets with the Port of Bremerton's finance team specific to the Port of Bremerton's project, the public portion of that, and to report back. Let's just get some additional information.
Do we have a second? Okay, so it looks like the motion did not move forward. All right, any other questions, comments? No? Thank you very
All right.
much for the
Thank
presentation.
you, Board. Let me just say, all your projects have value. They're all very credible projects. Having run many multi-million-dollar budgets, this is not a hard thing. Okay, let me just say this is not a very difficult task, and we tend to always make things bigger and more difficult than they should be, and that's, I guess, typical of government and in today's world. But again, I know there's a way, and I know that there's a way to make it happen, and I appreciate you guys take the time and think through it, and let's get her done. Let's get Kitsap to work. I mean, that's what we need to do here. It's all about our community. We're taxpayer supported, you're taxpayer supported. We work for the taxpayer. And so we need a return to the taxpayer. I mean, that's my obligation. I take that very seriously in my position. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move into general business, good of the order. Russ, you're going to take that?
I will, and rather than bring it up on the screen, I'll just go through them very quickly. The first one is an update on our Washington State's audit. This is our 2021 to 2023 audit. We have submitted all the necessary paperwork that they need. They're now doing their final review, and I'm expecting any time now to get an email with them for what they're calling an exit interview. I'll extend that invitation off to the board so the board can join me in what they tell us about our findings and recommendations moving forward. The second item is update on House Bill 1109, which is something that's been talked about quite a bit this evening. It currently sits on the House Rules Committee, and if the House Rules Committee pushes it to the floor, it will go to the House. It will go to the House for vote. If it passes through the House, it will then go to the Senate Ways and Means Committee. If it passes through Senate Ways and Means, then it goes to the Senate Rules Committee and then on to the Senate for final vote for approval. So it's still got a long ways to go, but the bill is still alive, and that's Bill 1109 for House Bill 1109 for extending sales tax rebates to 2065. And then finally, just a quick update on our policy committee. We met here a couple of weeks ago. Director Havers had mentioned that we are working through it in phases. Right now, we're looking at the essentials portion of the handbook. We're going to get together, I believe it's March 4th is our next meeting. We're going to get together and we're going to comb through that, and then we'll continue to work through it in phases. The plan is that once the policy committee is comfortable with the essentials portion of the director's handbook, they will take it to the board for final approval, and then we'll move on to the second portion of the director's handbook. And that, Madam Chair, is my updates.
Any more comments? Any good of the order from anybody? We're all good?
Can I just say one thing?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm sorry that I didn't speak up earlier while the audience was all here. This is really an impressive effort, and I'm touched by the fact that you as community members and potential workers on this project were here, and I appreciate your support for it. It makes a difference. I'm sorry it hasn't in the long run, but I appreciate the fact that you took the time to come. That's part of the deal.
Yes, I think that's a thank you from everyone on the board. All right, are we all done? And call it at 7:03. Adjourned. Thank you.